Meg Kilgannon, Education Research Associate for the Family Research Council. She's a member of, and tell me if I didn't get this name right, Hands Across the Aisle Coalition, Combating the Transgender Ideology. She's also Executive Director of Concerned Parents and Educators of Fairfax, and again, as in the case of Elizabeth, their resume goes on in greater detail in the program. Let's welcome Meg Kilgannon.
Hi, I really appreciate you having me here tonight and your interest in this topic generally. And when I got the invitation and they said they wanted to talk about family life education, I would describe myself as being here about reflecting the part of my biography that didn't get mentioned in the introduction because it's too long, but as operations director for an organization called parental.org. It's a parent research group that we started in Fairfax County back in 2015 when the family life education curriculum was overhauled for the first time in 25 years. And that was happening, maybe coincidentally, at the same time that Fairfax County jumped the shark and decided to let boys in the girls' bathrooms and you know, they preceded the Obama Dear Colleague on gender identity for schools. So I very patiently waited in my kitchen for someone from Heritage or Family Research Council or somebody from anywhere really to come and explain to the school board why that wasn't a good thing to do, or even someone from the National Organization of Women to come and defend women and girls and our right to privacy in spaces where we are unclothed. And no one said anything. So I said, well, I guess I'm going to have to become involved, and I hope people are really sorry when I'm done because I really didn't want to do this. My husband and I have 4 children. He travels a lot for his work, and you know, everybody's very busy. But as Elizabeth said, it is these educational issues that are what allow children to grow up into adulthood, that form their minds. 90% of children go to public schools. So even if you homeschool your child, even if you have your child in a Catholic school, 90% of children go to public school. And they form the mainstream of our society. And it's important for us to engage in that process. And I don't expect to get my way all of the time, but I do expect for my views to be articulated, heard, and respected. And I expect for people who also share my views to not be abused and you know, discriminated against or mischaracterized in the process of just simply going to school, right? Okay, so we knew that they were rewriting the policy for sex education in Fairfax County, which they call, and many jurisdictions do this, they call it family life education. So when you send your kid to school and you get the opt-out form for family life education, you think, that sounds fine. No, it's not called sex education, but that is in fact what it is. So this group of parents and I, we have, on your table I put out the flyer that we ended up producing. So we have over 80 lessons of sex education are taught in Fairfax County. So we divided into teams, and we read the 2015 curriculum, every single word of every single lesson, and we rated it, read, or we think it's inappropriate, it's inaccurate, it's inappropriate for ages, or it's just objectionable. We rated it yellow if the group of us disagreed how to rate it, or if we felt that really a parent should decide for themselves if it was age appropriate for their child, and then green if it was, most people would find it just fine. And I say this with the complete and utter knowledge that it is up to every single parent to make this decision for themselves. and I really and truly hope and pray that they make it carefully, right? So this is intended to be an assist for the very busy parent who maybe doesn't have time to read every single word of every single lesson and make that decision. So we did the original version, the 2015 version, and then the 2016 version, the updated version was released, and that's what's reflected here. And we read that, and we rated it. We had 2 people per lesson.
And you were multi-denominational.
We're multi-denominational, people of faith, people of no faith, and we produced this guide and promulgated it throughout the county. We've done that every year since, and I don't have the latest flyer yet. It's being printed, so I'm just giving you an old one for an example. But we would dearly love for someone in Prince William County to do this here. You really need to. You really need to know what is in your Prince William County curriculum. I guarantee you'll be surprised. We were pretty shocked. And our curriculum in Fairfax, when you consider other locations in the country, our curriculum in Fairfax isn't that bad. There are a lot of things in it that I wish weren't, but there are a lot of things not in it that I'm glad are not. And the only way you'll know what's in it is if you look. So I would be more than happy to help any of us in the group, in the parent and child group, would be more than happy to help you get your feet under you and get started in doing this process. In Fairfax County, the curriculum is made available at the public library on a disk drive, and you can go and copy it. I don't know how they make the curriculum available in Prince William County. It may be that you have to go to the school and read it at the school. It may be that you could request a copy and it would be given to you. But I can promise you that it is your absolute right to read that curriculum, to read any curriculum that your child will have, and to make a judgment about it, whether or not you want your child to be involved in it. The state of Virginia allows you to opt out of FLE if you don't want your child to take it. And that's a very personal decision for families. It's obviously up to parents. In my family, we opted out K through 8, no questions asked, because I wanted my children to understand that we make our decisions about matters of sexual integrity based on our family values, and we don't go with the crowd, right? This is the most intimate thing you'll ever do with another human being, and it is unique, special, and it really doesn't need to be discussed in groups. Once they got into high school, and the whole situation changes, you hope your children are pretty well formed by that point. There are social pressures involved. We let them choose if they wanted to be opted in or out, because I knew by then that they knew right from wrong, or at least what their father and I thought was right and wrong, and I trusted them to comport themselves well. Some children opted to opt out. Some children decided to just stay in. It's a family decision, and I really hope that more parents will take it more seriously. So I'm here with a plea for someone in this room to consider starting a group like this. You'll be surprised when you start it how many people will help you. We were really surprised and very happy with how many people joined us to do this work, and it's very rewarding to make this kind of a contribution to other parents and to help them to make this sort of decision. I just want to mention briefly 2 other points. One thing that Elizabeth brought up about the situation with history. This plays directly into, I have a very small contract for part-time work at the Family Research Council, and my job there is kind of a really big one, though. It is to research and monitor the impact of left-wing ideological organizations on the educational system. So, for example, a group like the Southern Poverty Law Center, they have a program called Teaching Tolerance. I can assure you it teaches nothing like tolerance. It teaches children how to become activists and how to become social justice warriors for left-wing causes. And they have a $500 million endowment, and they mail their information into 14,000 school districts across the country every year. It's a steady flow of information from the Southern Poverty Law Center's Teaching Tolerance, backed up with threats of lawsuits if you don't do their wishes. The same thing happens from the ACLU in terms of the bullying with the lawsuits. The Human Rights Campaign has a program called Welcoming Schools that's designed for K through 6th grade to promote gender identity ideology in public schools. That's 5-year-olds. And there are many other organizations with lots of money who are doing this sort of work, just pumping this information into the public schools. And so, as a parent, my question is, well, who's doing anything from my point of view? Because I don't agree with any of those people, right? And there are some good schools that are, some good groups that are trying to do that, but they just are nowhere near as financed and as professional as these groups on the left. So it really is down to parents. It really is up to us, concerned citizens, grandparents. We really have got to make our voices heard. Because if the only information they get is from this side of the room, then of course they're going to do everything this way. They're going to revise the history program based on, maybe you saw the New York Times Project 1619. That was a big splash in the New York Times a few weeks ago, and the Wall Street Journal was horrified that the Pulitzer Committee had worked this into lesson plans for K through 12. And I thought, well, I guess when they're shouting outside the ivory tower at the Wall Street Journal, maybe you pay attention. But the Southern Poverty Law Center has been pumping this crap into public schools for 30 years, and no one has said boo. So I'm glad the Wall Street Journal has woken up. But this has been going into schools for a really long time. And you cannot criticize schools for using it. They're trying to do more with less. They have pressures, they have budget cuts. Of course they'll use free resources if they're offered. But those free resources are always from views that we don't share, almost always. So I would also advise that parents be really, really aware of the fact that there's a billion-dollar porn industry talking to children about sex. Whether you think they are or not, they are. And you need to have a conversation with your kids about that. It's a very serious problem. Kids have these, we have them. They're on school buses looking at stuff that would really surprise you. So please talk to your children about that and explain to them what your expectations are and about the problems that can be associated with that. There are a lot of really wonderful groups that can help you have that conversation. I'd be happy to share some names with you if you're interested in that. Okay, and the last thing I will mention is two more things. Recently at the Family Research Center, we hosted Max Eden and Andrew Pollock. Andrew Pollock's daughter, Meadow, died in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting. And Max Eden is an education policy expert from the Manhattan Institute in New York, and he did a lot of investigating. Andrew Pollock wanted to know why did his daughter die? Why was she shot in her school by a person who everybody thought would end up being a school shooter? And I would just encourage you to read this book. The presentation that happened at FRC will be on C-SPAN tonight. You can go to the FRC website and see the hour presentation on it. If you get the book, it reads like a novel, but it's also like an instruction manual for parents of what kind of policies you need to look for that school boards promulgate. Because the policies that led that school system to stop expelling students who needed to be out of the school are what led to the shooting. It's really very tragic. It's really important for you to look at, to know about. Because just like you can have a very wonderful experience sexually, or you can have a very life-changing and life-damaging and even, desperately horrible situation sexually. FLE is a matter of life and death, whether you're talking about abortion, or you're talking about rape, or you're talking about other violence, which we don't want it to be about that, but sadly that is part of it. The same thing is true for these policies on discipline. These are life and death issues with life and death consequences. And our children are going to school, and the teachers are there in the school, and everyone needs to know that they're safe there. So I'd really encourage you to read that book and to look into those policies, the disciplinary policies. If you hear that Prince William County is looking into revising their disciplinary policies, you better pay attention. And then I would just make a final plug that churches, women's groups, any social group that you're in, any organization, I don't know, the Lions Club, all those wonderful fraternal organizations. The Federation of Republican Women used to have two offices. One was to monitor what was happening at the Board of Supervisors, and the other was to monitor what was happening at the school board and report back to the club. And those offices aren't really happening anymore, but they should be. And your church should also have someone who's going to these meetings and monitoring what's happening and report back to your community, because it matters. And when we don't have a local news source anymore, we don't have a Centerville Times anymore really to speak of, we don't have another source of information, the only way you're going to find out is if you go and you pay attention. So I hope that you will, and I'm happy to assist if someone wants to start a parent and child here. We have one in Loudoun now, so we'd love to have one in Prince William. And you don't have to be part of us, you can be your own thing and we can just help out. But we would love to work with you.